Everybody, good evening, everybody out there. You guys doing okay today? Sorry about that delay earlier in that caption. I was indisposed at the moment. Hey, it's Wednesday. Today, on Wednesdays, I do reserve the right to go off the rails into something else. Is there an echo, guys? You hear an echo? Please tell me no echo. Who hears an echo? Is good there? Okay, someone must have, you must have two players on. Turn one of the players off and you won't have an echo. So just check that real quick. Oh boy. You know, guys, I got some scientific news today that wasn't good. It's not bad news. It's just not good news. It's not good news. All too often we look in the scientific realm to analyze things and going over tons of data. We're talking about pages of data tables, lots of analytics. You're seeing that data from a very accurate and true perspective. Not so much trending. I shouldn't have said trending, but the factual points of data that they're just not good, right? They're not good. They're not good. No, 12 Pine, it's not a recording. This is live. Is that I sound like a recording? Am I that boring? Really? That boring? I sound the same all the time? Well, at least I don't have multiple personalities, right? Thank God for that. Anyway. So you're poring over this data and you find out something about the Earth. Now, I'm going to explain something to you guys this evening. We're going to shatter some misconceptions about a few things, because I know that the average person is not, they don't look into things in depth, because they don't know how to be pointed in the right direction. So I'm going to share a few things with you. Most people know the orbit around the sun. Right? You know about the orbit around the sun, right? Our orbit, the Earth's orbit around the sun. You know about that, right? It is not in a perfect circle. It's not in a perfect circle. It's elliptical. Is what it is. It's elliptical. Now, if you all know about properties of gravitational pull, you know that the closer we are to the sun, gravity changes, right? The further away from the sun that we are, Earth's gravitational pull is really felt because it's not mitigated by the sun. Sun's gravitational pull is enormous. So if you're facing the sun and we're close to the sun, you're on a deep curvature. Is what you are, because this planet, as it goes around the sun, is being squeezed, expanded in different areas. It's always moving. It is not solid. It's always moving, right? It's like a big ball of Jell-O that's always moving and changing shapes, always changing shapes, always, as it goes around the sun. Now, these changes are very subtle, but over the course of time, they become more meaningful, like now. I need you to know that before I get into any other topics, because we're going to talk about the water event and why it will happen. And believe me, it's so easy. A caveman can understand that. We're going to talk about certain things of this influx of cosmic rays, what we can expect in the next few months. We'll talk about winter could potentially be abruptly halted. No kidding. I mean, just abruptly halted. A very different type winter, by the way, right? Right now we see winter time, and some places have abnormally warm temperatures, but it's not out of the realm. These things have happened before due to weather patterns, but an abrupt change could really take place, which means no one could, because to be honest with you, who picks up the farmer's almanac? Who does that? Do you guys do that? Now, I haven't read the Farmer's Almanac in years, in many, many years. I haven't read that, but I'm interested to know what they said about the month of December. Very interested to know what they say about this, because what is happening now is that we're coming into this time, this era, where one thing destabilizes another, and it's almost impossible to correctly forecast beyond a day or beyond 2 days. Almost impossible. Things are changing so quickly that the forecast models require a more robust system to get it right. There are too many variables in there now. Too many variables. One immutable fact is we have GMO foods, right? We do. You remember last time I told you about GMO foods. Why would they even make GMO foods? Why? We have enough seeds on this planet to do what we want to do. That doesn't make sense to have GMO food. But it does if the environment is going to change. It certainly does. If you don't want people to get spooked. It does if you're trying to change things subtly. Right? It does. Because radiation can kill plant life. So can UV and other things. Strange. So while everybody argues about genetically modified organisms or food and things of that nature, right? You got to ask yourself a question. Why would they do that in the first place? Why change the nature of food? And what they do is they switch things around on the genetic level is what they do. In other words, say that a plant can only be grown in the southern hemisphere because it needs heat and a lot of moisture. Well, they can change the genes around, introduce new genes, and now that same plant can grow in colder climates. Right? So they're mixing up the genes. That's what that means. Corn that can grow at precisely the right height. And exactly, precisely the right height. So that when a machine comes, it can harvest the corn, and the machine can be set at a certain level because all the stalks are going to grow to that specific level. They're doing that too, for the sake of machinery. Isn't that funny? For the sake of machinery, we're talking about corn, right? Can you imagine a corn stalk where all the corn grows on the right side only? Wouldn't that be funny? All the corn pointing in the same direction at the absolute same height. So you have a machine that can harvest it just like that. So what they're doing is they have the power right now, and it is a power, to manipulate the food, to make it do certain things. Only the Lord knows what's mixed in with it. But what I'm telling you is that they're rearranging the genes, and they're introducing. But why? I'll tell you why. Have you ever seen a non-tampered cornfield? Have you ever seen a cornfield that nobody tampered with? Have you ever seen it? Well, let me share something with you. You do that in the U.S., you look at one of those cornfields that are untampered with, they're not so healthy. Believe it or not, they're not so healthy. They're not. They're not as healthy as you would expect. They're just not. They're not as healthy. And if you subject that corn to a nutritional test, boy, that corn has problems. It has problems. So the GMO corn is quite resilient. It really is. So it doesn't matter if radiation is introduced into, and how would they hide that from you? I'll tell you why. You have to know about a Geiger counter, the different types of radiation, and the expensive sensors that it takes to pick up different types of radiation. If a Geiger counter were all you needed to take note of radiation, then NASA just wasted billions of dollars, right? They did. They wasted billions of dollars to do that. Billions. They started this stuff back in, 2001? Most of these, 2001, most, and 2002, most of the sensors that they use on the ISS were commissioned, and they're using them. Most of them are still being used to the day. You've got special type of spectrometers right? Special types of, there's a dosimetric mapping system. You have those which detect up to, now it's 5 types of radiation, what it looks for on the space station. And it measures the radiation, of course, but these are expensive machines, not a Geiger counter. Right? That's not what it is, because you have to detect neutron radiation also. Have you ever heard of that? Neutron radiation. It's always entering into the space station, right? And neutron radiation is directly responsible for affecting the marrow in your bones, which is the blood production center. So if that goes incredibly wrong, you're doomed. You're just doomed. If your body stops making blood cells, you're doomed, because your blood cells are always being destroyed by various different things, right? It's just so many sensors. So a Geiger counter is not going to detect certain types of radiation. And when you know what those types of radiation are the most dangerous, they are. You can sense, or you can begin to feel physically the effects of other types of radiation. You can. But it's very difficult to notice from the onset the effects of the radiation I'm speaking of. And that happens through an atmospheric breach. That happens. Right? One of the symptoms of this, ladies and gentlemen, is when your legs feel heavy. Now, this year, 2016, I guarantee you there are many people who have been having bad issues from the waist down in their bones. From the waist down in their bones. I can guarantee you people have had something like a heavy leg syndrome, an uncomfortable feeling in their legs, and they can't figure it out. Nor can their doctors figure it out. Because when your doctor goes and submits reports, if something is notable, they have to report to a controlling faction anyway. But I guarantee you that's the case, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. I guarantee you people's arthritis has increased a whole lot in 2016. And the headaches are about to come back. Some people may be feeling the effects of, some of you may have suffered with headaches years ago. They're just now coming back again. They're coming back again. And folks, what I'm telling you is this. We study so many things. But if we're failing to look at the obvious, the things right in front of us. Why would they create GMO food? Because those that eat that food won't be subject to the changes in Earth right away. In other words, it can mask physical symptoms. Mask it. Have you noticed the UV? It's so funny. Now, we've got to be careful with a few things. I remember in 2015, the UV changed. It altered, it changed. It was much more intense. But if you go back and look at the charts, it's normal. But if you snag the charts, back then the data all the data, a consensus of the data implied that the UV was much stronger. You go back now, that data is scrubbed. It's normalized. So what are they doing? Rewriting history to cover their tracks. It's very simple to do with a computer. All right? Very simple to do. You just go put in some normal data, some average data. Somebody looks back and says, oh, it didn't rise back then. Nothing to worry about now. That's what people are doing right now. Nothing to worry about right now. It's been like this for a long time. See, because the internet says so. In fact, a lot of people walk around saying, well, it must not be true because I can't find it on the internet. Any of you facing people like that? We have become just like cattle. We really have. Just like cattle. It's almost like we stopped using the spiritual discernment that the Lord gave us. All right? And now we're buying the lie too. If it's on the internet, right? And if it's unnotable, somebody like CNN or Fox, we believe it. Yet we call them liars. But if they write something, well, it must be true. They're just giving their opinion about it. That's a psychological operation. A big one, a very effective one. Nobody trusts NASA. All right? Here's the big thing. Now, I'll say this again. People don't trust NASA. But how do you interpret the scientific data? You have to use NASA's equipment and the information they provide. Right? So if you don't trust NASA, but you trust the data that's coming out of their machines and satellites and optics and things of that nature, isn't that ironic? That doesn't make sense. Right? Now I can tell you this. Some of the data I know for a fact is right on the money. Some is normalized. I don't trust people's interpretations. But let me tell you something about real-time editing. Maybe you don't know about this. You can watch a live video feed on television on any of the major networks. And I'm telling you now, they can alter the person. They can alter. The person you're seeing is not that person. It is a video construct, mapping somebody else's mouth movements and voice, putting it into somebody else's voice. They can do this with a live. You can take your camera, send a live feed to one of these major networks. They can relay that near instant. It's near real time, but it's completely edited. In fact, if you were filming me with your iPhone and I'm talking, and then you are transmitting that to CNN, the people will see John McCain talking in John McCain's voice, but you're doing it all. And there's no John McCain there. None. And you know, that's what you should be nosy about and say, well, what are the capabilities of a computer these days so that you can see the truth? One thing mankind does, they can't help themselves. They love to brag on what they accomplished, right? So you can go and find out certain abilities that men have. You just have to know how to look. You couldn't look up fake news, and that's not going to give you a bunch of stuff. But you can look up the accomplishments in the entertainment industry and new and upcoming cutting-edge pieces of technology, and they'll tell you the whole story. Because they can't help but to brag on themselves. I've seen it happen, folks. I've seen private organizations brag about certain propulsion systems. Yet you have a whole nother group of people out there trying to find out the propulsion system NASA has for certain vehicles. So you have one company bragging about what they just did and their breakthrough. And then you have NASA. They're not saying a word because it's top secret, but the other company out there is telling you exactly what it is. But NASA won't say a word. So while you're looking for a specific item, right, they're going to be hush-hush about it. But if you begin to look up sections where men can't help but to brag on themselves, they're going to spill the beans all over the table. That's one thing humanity cannot help but to do. It goes like this. If you do something exciting and good, you want somebody else to see it. You do. You want somebody else to see it. You want somebody else to enjoy it. Humanity cannot help but to do that. They can't help it. And sometimes they make mistakes in doing that. Right? They do. They make mistakes. So what I'm telling you is this. The things that you've been looking for right before your eyes, but you're looking in the direction they have told you to look. Like if you want to know anything about rockets, the normal person thinks of NASA, right? That's what they think about because you've been trained to believe that NASA's in control of all the rockets. Most people don't even know NASA's mission. I'm going to ask one of you out there, what is NASA's mission? Do you know what NASA exists for? How many people know? How many of you know what NASA exists for? Let's just call it their calling. Somebody says no clue. Somebody says somebody else. I don't know. You know, people don't know. Isn't that strange? Is that strange? Somebody says to save the elite. right? Somebody says military. So we can get the general census that not too many people know what NASA is. Somebody says research. You know what NASA exists for? Planetary defense. Planetary defense. And they've gone a step further than planetary defense. There's a interstellar defense platform with that too. But planetary defense? And you got kids walking around and everything. It is because, a lot of people, they just missed the whole boat on that. What about the European Space Agency? Listen, they're not pouring in this money to impress you. If NASA, if their main mission is planetary defense and security of this planet, okay, we've got a problem because we have not seen what they've actually been doing. They've shown you the Disney World version, and you bought it hook, line, and sinker. But you don't see the other side. And everything has another side. Everything. There's another side to everything. They give you just enough where they love for you to think that they're conspiracy theorists too. They love for you to think that they're not telling the truth because they have your attention. Here's the key point. They want you to look at them and look at them only. They don't care how you look at them because they have something else going on. They will cover their tracks in view of the public, right? When things can no longer be hidden. But that's so people would continue to look to them while they're doing something on the other side. Very interesting, isn't it? You can go back in history and see why NASA was formed, and you'll begin to see it. You see their mission, why they work with the Air Force Space Command, why they are that they. It's just far more expansive than what you believe. In other words, NASA's not separate from other space programs out there. They're not. They're all one and the same. Because to them, the entire planet is at stake. Now, why would we need planetary defense? Why? And who thought that up? I'll tell you why. What? No, I'm not going to tell you why. What I'm telling you is that for a lot of organizations, the truth is right there in front of us. You need not search for it. You just need to pay attention. They're telling you everything. Now, let's talk about the water event. Have you guys ever heard me talk about the water event? Now, we already know that the Earth does not rotate around the sun in a perfect circle. And it's being squashed and stretched and squeezed as it goes around, so that alters, what does that alter? Gravitational pull of the Earth, right? With changes in the gravitational pull of the Earth, from the way we go around our solar system, what does that do? It adds pressure on the tectonic plates. Pressure on the tectonic plates, what does that do? What if the gravitational pull changes with the tectonic plates? What does that do? As it moves the rocks, it also has cracks and it adds pressure to certain volcanoes. So they begin to erupt, right? Here's what you didn't know. The eruptions underneath the ocean are way out of control right now, and you can't see them. You can't see them. On occasion, you will see them. What was that, 2009? When the one, what was that place? Guys, help me out. I'm getting old. My brain doesn't work quite right. But there was an eruption, and it sent out these vent plumes. I mean, just ash was coming out of the ocean in the middle of nowhere from a volcanic eruption. That was relatively close to the surface, right? I was just sending it out, and they had no fly zones. People had to stay out of that area and everything else. Then people were talking about it, but as soon as it stopped, nobody talked about underwater volcanism. And that's one of my major concerns. Here's what happens with underwater volcanism. When a volcano underwater erupts, it forms what's called pillows. It's like a pillow shaped. But that lava solidifies very quick, right? And lets off gases, but it leaves behind it a pillow type structure. Volcanic rock that looks like a pillow. And it leaves them all over the ocean floor. All over the ocean floor, right? So when it solidifies like that, what's it doing? It's taking up space in the ocean, right? It's taking up space. As they continue to erupt, which they are, because it's an ecosystem down there where these things erupt, but as they continue to erupt, it's taking up more and more space. What happens if you have a full glass of water and then you put ice cubes in that glass? It's going to spill out, right? It's going to start spilling out. So there's a steady rise, both in water levels and water temperature. In fact, what is it? 88% of underwater volcanism is what's responsible for our climate change, truth be told. It's responsible for our climate change because of the gases. You see, unlike a volcano topside, undersea volcanoes, as soon as they solidify so fast that they let off lots of gases, right? On the surface, that lava has time to cool off, but not in the oceans. I mean, it's almost instantaneous, and it cools off, and it releases gases, lots of gases. And while it's doing that, releasing all these gases, you have concentrations in the southern regions of the globe. Us heating up our atmosphere. The excess amount of carbon. Now, volcanoes do something else you may not know of. They let out metallic particles that reflect the sun's light back out to space. Did you guys know that? So they can absolutely stop global warming too. But global warming is not caused from people because all the planets are going through the same cycle. Did you guys know that Jupiter heated up again another 900 degrees? Did you know that? Did you know that Venus heated up 1,200 degrees? Oh, nobody told you that? Oh, okay. Well, now you know. Did you know that the planets are heating up? Did you know we're having issues with our satellites because of the density in the upper atmosphere now? That the thermosphere is becoming dense for the first time in human history, that in our human history is becoming dense because of all the trash that's flowing through. And so it raises the temperature because now that heat has something to travel through. See, without atoms, right? Without atoms, how is heat going to travel? How's it going to travel without material to travel through? Heat travels through material. It's an exchange. Heat is exchanged from one surface to the other, right? Because if infrared is the same way, infrared heats up the substance of your body. If there's no substance, you can have all the infrared in the world, and you will never get hot because you have nothing to heat up. So in the upper atmospheres, this is taking place. Now, that's going to cause a problem with a few things, certainly our satellites. It's part of Air Force Command, Air Force Space Command, to keep track of all these satellites, should they have to shoot one out of the air. They watch for degrading orbits. Their mission is to make sure that some of these satellites in the atmosphere just one of their missions is that they do not re-enter Earth's atmosphere and kill anybody. And some of those things, let me give you an example. If you had a 12-inch by 12-inch box, I'm going to just put it to you this way. Some of those satellites have a 12-inch by 12-inch box. If that box hits the atmosphere, burns up, it could destroy the United States of America. It could destroy the major parts of Africa. It could destroy South America. It could destroy the greater half of Asia. Most people are not aware of this. These are highly radioactive particles in there. And it is through my observation, listen to me close. See, when we talk about wormwood, and when wormwood fell upon a third part of the waters, the rivers of waters, and made people sick because of the waters, there was an airburst in the atmosphere that affected the water, that poisoned the water. You know, I read that over and over and over again about that wormwood. But it only affected the waters. It did not affect anything else. And then when you go and read the rest of the portions of Revelation, you see that the land was affected. You see that the grass was affected. You see that the trees were burnt up. But when it comes to wormwood, it's different. It says, and a third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. Right? Burning as it were a lamp. That's not a clear description. And it says, listen, and it fell upon a third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. It didn't say anything about the land. So then the focus here are the waters. Did you see that? That's Revelation chapter 8, verse 10. It fell upon a third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And it says, and the name of the star is called wormwood, that's bitterness. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. It gives you an explanation. They died because of the waters were made bitter. So whatever this thing is affected the water. And the water was poisoned. And people died who drank the water. Now I ask you this: what in the world could fall upon? What could fall upon a third part of the rivers? What could fall upon a third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters, the sources of waters? What could do that? And I'm telling you right now, satellites carry something that could absolutely do that. We don't need any external anything. We don't need that. I look at this description, and when you know about the power cells in a satellite and the material they carry, which is basically a small nuclear reactor with very high, listen, you talk about radiation, that little 12-inch by 12-inch box could put Fukushima to shame. But now you're talking about a direct delivery system. So if a satellite fell, here's the part that gets me about wormwood. If one of these satellites fell, it would not affect the entire Earth. It wouldn't do it. But it would affect at least 1/3 of the Earth. It would affect the waters around the area it fell into. That's what it would affect, the waters. Because of the material. It would affect the waters. It would effectively poison the waters. From a 12-inch by 12-inch box. All that radioactive material in that 12-inch by 12-inch box. And if it falls to Earth, and when something like that falls to Earth, what happens to it? It starts burning up in the atmosphere like a lamp. It gets very bright, doesn't it? Like a lamp. But then it would just dissipate, fall apart, and that radioactive stuff would begin to spread out. Almost like a powder. Right? Like a powder. And then when it spreads out like a powder, it's going to settle on the land will absorb it. No issue with the land, right? Because of the soil. But the waters, if it gets into the waters, well, you have a big problem. You just have an absolute problem. And then when I see this, that this thing fell upon a third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters, it's almost like it's giving a location. So it's not going to hit in the deep desert. Nope, won't hit the deep desert. It's not going to hit and just affect a landmass. It's going to hit in a very special location, like on a seacoast. The fountains of waters is the source of waters. The source of waters. The source of water itself flowing inland. Well, what is that? The source of water. Those are your big lakes, right? Aren't those your big lakes? because you can't drink ocean water. The fountains of the waters, it fell upon a third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters, the source of the waters. The source of the waters. So it's almost like it's giving you a location of where this thing is going to just smack. Where it's going to hit, what it's going to affect. But you don't see anything where it affected the landmass, do you? I see nothing in here that indicates the land blowing up or anything else. See, because you read this. You read this. The first angel sounding, there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. And they were cast upon the earth, and a third part of the trees was burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. So that indicates something physical to the land, right? The second angel sounding, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood, and a third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and a third part of the ships were destroyed. This has a physical effect on the ships in the sea destroyed. The waters became like blood, right? And it killed the sea life. That's a physical effect. But then when you get down, now this great mountain burning, this mountain burning with fire, that's not wormwood. That's Revelation 8, verse 8. That's not wormwood. Wormwood falls upon the waters. And there's no mention that it affected the land. No mention. But come on, we live in a day where we have seen these things. We have seen airbursts. We've seen comets that airbursts. But the problem is when they airburst, they vaporize so quick and all the materials just about burn up. But if a satellite did that, we know that that nuclear material is just simply not going to burn up. That nuclear material is very resilient. It can burn and still hurt you. So it's going to spread out. And because a comet or meteor, if it had a very high altitude airburst, well, then we're really safe then. However, if one of these satellites breaks up in the upper atmosphere, we know that that radioactive material, because it's kept cold in space, we know that as soon as it hits the atmosphere, it's going to begin to ignite. A small type of meltdown, followed by some explosions, followed by almost that powder-type substance going all over the place, spreading out, getting caught in the upper atmosphere, spreading out, and it will fall upon the waters. You'd be safer drinking arsenic, right? Also notice something else. It fell upon the waters, but you didn't hear anything about fish. See, this is another part. The first one, that great mountain burning with fire, was cast into the sea. A third part of the sea became blood, and a third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And a third part of the ships were destroyed. So you see a physical effect upon the life in the seas, a life in the oceans, and a physical effect upon the vehicles that are in the ocean, ships and boats and things of that nature, right? So you see that physical effect. But you get to wormwood. It's only men are dying because the waters are made bitter. And so this gives me, this really begins to refine something to me. There are lots of radioactive materials, but there's one material specifically, well, there's a group of materials specifically that go right through a water bottle. They will bond with H2O. They will seep right through the soil into anything that has water in it. The plant life is kaput if this happens. If it fell into a desert region or something like that, the land would absorb it. It would absorb it over time, a couple rains, and you wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. The earth can just use that material, but the waters cannot. And you see no effects of fish dying. Only men dying. This part gets me. You see men dying because the waters are made bitter. Don't you think that's a little bit puzzling? But then when you begin to analyze what's in these satellites, you'll say, oh my goodness, we don't need something external. If we had a failure, we're in trouble. Now, not every satellite has these types of, and there's some other satellites up there, folks. That's just like the Russians. I'm not going to talk about the U.S., but the Russians have classified satellites up there with power systems that you wouldn't believe. It is essentially a high-grade nuclear reactor, functional, way up in the atmosphere. And if they ever explode, if somebody ever shoots them, we're in trouble. We're just in trouble. Some of the radioactive payloads in these things is about as big as a small car. Not good. Not good. So we're going to have issues and issues. That's an issue. Now, you guys beginning to get the picture. So guess what? We don't need anything. This is what we don't need. That will give us all a headache. Is for anything external to upset the junk we have put around this planet. We don't need a direct hit, right? And this is why NORAD, you know what NORAD is, right? So we have other facilities like NORAD, but they're always concerned when IR tracking starts picking up things, even small things, that come close to our satellites. I'm telling you, people begin to panic at the smallest of things because they know if one of these satellites, and we have many up there, and everybody has many up there, if one of these birds begins to come down because it is smacked, we have a problem. We have a problem. And now, ladies and gentlemen, where the satellites roam, the composition is changing. It's very difficult to tell the outcome. So they're running simulations like you wouldn't believe to see, because they need to know the actual reactions of this radiation introduced into an environment where they just dealt with minor influxes of radiation. We're going to have a lot of pulses coming in here, and only the Lord knows the exact nature of what they can do and what they won't do. We don't know that. All the people who observe this, they know it's going to be dangerous. It is not a joke. I can't believe people are, I know you can't see it, right? I know that, and by the way, when the 26 gets here, and don't panic for the 26th or the 25th. Don't do that, because that would be not smart. But I hope that you consider something. It's going to affect a whole lot more than you ever thought over the next couple of years. The 25th or 26th is not your problem. But it will build, and there are pulses with this thing. And no one knows. Listen, the bad part about a pulse is that they're moving so incredibly fast. And they're very difficult to pick up because they can overlap each other. They operate in a strange type of dynamic. It's kind of like if you had a pool and you drop two pebbles in the pool, and then you have two waves coming out at once. Well, where they meet in the middle, they cause another wave, right? Because you have wave refraction. And then they start, you can see this in quantum physics, and actually you can deduce a formula from it for the simulation to see what the outcome is. But what I'm telling you is that we have multiple waves and impacts that have happened in this stuff, and they're flying all over. They're coming towards us. Now, while on the onset, you may not feel a thing. You may not notice a thing. Over the course of time, all of us are going to notice. Every single person on the face of this earth is going to notice. They will notice. And then what? Then what? Let me give you a proof of concept one more time so you guys don't think I'm whistling Dixie. 2015, I uttered the phrase, what was it? Full stop. You guys remember that? Do you remember that? I'd say it now because somebody's on the way out. They are going out. But listen, I uttered the words in 2015, full stop. I didn't give you an explanation why. I told you to remember that. You remember that? You guys remember? Some of you folks that were here a long time ago, you remember, full stop. What happened in 2016? Do you guys remember what happened at the climate conference? What did Obama say while he was talking? You know what he said? Out of the blue. He said, full stop. It did not fit in with the dialogue of which he was speaking. He said that. I gave you that key phrase to let you know I'm not whistling Dixie. He said it. Now, while many people don't even know I said that, but I give you guys a hint. Because listen to me, well, it's your choice if you listen. Folks, the times that are ahead of us, it's not going to be like any other time you've ever lived in. Now, if you abide in Christ, you need to know about the power of the living God that's working right now. Most people don't even know that, so they're gonna draw back to practical protectionism. They just don't know. A lot of people don't have they don't share a testimony where they were thirsty and all of a sudden their thirst went away, where they didn't have food to eat, but then they had their nutritional levels checked and their blood checked and they were healthier than everybody else around them. The Lord can sustain you, no problem. A lot of people don't believe that. You're still alive and you should have been dead. And you know it. This time is not going to be like any other time. And do you know people are playing games and still trying to be famous and all this, that, and the other? Do you know we have a new president coming in and people are still blaming both presidents for everything they can blame them for? It's ridiculous. And we're Christians. We ought to cease doing those things. We ought to stop doing those things and focus ourselves. Stop making up a truth that we believe in, but actually adopt the truth. You know what the truth is? That the Lord's never going to leave us nor forsake us. You're going to have to know this, because the nature of things as you know them is going to abruptly change without warning. There's going to be no warning for a few events. Underwater volcanism. I mean, it's really taking a toll. It is so subtle. Do you not know that the southern hemisphere is heating up? Do you guys know that? Can you concede that moisture is being trapped in the atmosphere? Do you know that solid earth, the air, and the waters are not multiple systems, but in fact one system? I know that's outside of the paradigm or the teachings that you guys have received. Do you know that the seismic signals, once a good seismic signal, is something very easy? Let me give you an example of something, because you're going to see it. How many of you know about high tides and low tides? How many of you know about that? High and low tides. You guys know about that? High and low tides? Well, guess what? You guys know what fortnightly is, right? You know what fortnightly is? Every other week. That's what that is. So then, every other week, when there's a low tide, it's a good signal of seismic activity. Every other week. And that's because of the frequency. The frequency could be once every 100,000 years, right? Or once every second. Or it could be 1,000 times every second. But the frequency to which these things do occur, because the earth is like a big blob of jello. Like a big blob of jello. You know, jello, or if you put a ball of grease in the water, do you not know it would fluctuate at a very specific frequency until it settles? Right? The earth is not settling. The vibrations of the earth are becoming stronger and stronger, which means the wobble is increasing. It's being smashed more and stretched more. It's not settling down. It's increasing in its movements. Something is agitating this planet, something is agitating the other planets. In fact, the agitation is so much it's thrown certain missions off course concerning Mars. Missions scrubbed because of altitude changes. See, that subtle change, if you launch something from Earth, there are constant adjustments, but you must know that window. Down to, I'm telling you, 1,000th of an inch, you better know that window. And so these adjustments can be thrown. That's just like when they make an aircraft, right? If you have one rivet, 500 thousandths of an inch too short, you've got to take the rivet out. Now, the human eye can't detect that, but you've got to take that rivet out and put another one in there. Because that airframe can suffer greatly from one thing by engineering being off like that. A small gap in one of the truss holders on the side of a fuselage can really damage the airframe, right? And so these calculations have to be precise, but they're going to scrub things. They've been scrubbing a lot of missions lately. But while you have not seen a space shuttle launch, if you were careful to watch, you've noticed that the Air Force has been landing these strange aircraft all over the place. Have you noticed? You guys know about the XF flights, right? You know about those. Here's the problem. There are things landing from space that man built. They're not ET. Man built them. Why didn't you hear about the launches? That's what you should ask. I remember the one craft that was landing. They were like, "Oh yeah, this craft is scheduled to land. It's one of the Air Force's top secret vessels." This is what they were talking about on the net. Never once did anybody say, "Well, when did they launch it?" They were just talking about it landing. Nobody asked the question, when was it launched? Who launched it? They didn't ask. Jill, there are going to be a lot of changes on the ISS. Lots of changes. This is cosmic radiation, right? Now they have a their EV arms. Well, let's just say they're EVA suits, and they have they're really going to be using directional mapping of where this radiation is coming from, right? They have to do that. They're going to have to do that. And they have the CPDS system up there and everything. It's a charged particle directional spectrometers. They have those up there. They're going to have to see where these charged particles are coming from, coming into the ISS, right? Some of these charged particles, they have special materials inside the ISS that can stop the charged particles. Remember what I told you. The charged particles are stopped from coming to the surface of Earth because of the magnetosphere. Remember when we spoke about the topic of the early Russian cosmonauts who went into orbit without a magnetosphere, without replicating the Earth's magnetosphere? Remember what I told you what happened to those cosmonauts? They went cuckoo, right? And you may or may not be able to find that now, I'm not sure, but their neurological connections were broken. They came down as animals, is what they did. So they found out early that you have to replicate the Earth's magnetic field before you go up into space. Why? Because these charged particles will go right through your cells, breaking the core of your cells. They will utterly turn you into jello, right? And so guess what? When any ship goes up there, they have to replicate a magnetic field around that vessel to stop the charged particles. They found out the hard way. There's been some horrible stories in space that they just never shared with people. I mean, some horrific stories, right? The only stories you ever heard about were the ones that the public watched, that the public knew about. But if the public does not know, they're not going to tell it, because they would be defunded. They would say, no, this is too risky. You all know, and I know, that if the public saw a bad accident in space, and too many people died, right? The people are going to say, no, we're not going to fund it. They will pull the funding. Now, that's not the bad part. When they pull the funding, that's just as an example that these people are willing to call you out on these things, and it's going to be trouble, because if the people don't go for something, right, you have no other choice but to scrub it. And that's why they don't allow people to know anything, because you're dealing with ethics. That's why they have secrets. You can't do genetic tampering and pass any ethics board doing so. So guess what? It's classified. They govern who can see and who can't see, and it's not covered by anyone's ethics committees. Congress cannot jump in because they're not authorized. They don't have that type of clearance. So they can do anything they want to do, right? Now, we all know they have CERN, right? We all know they have CERN. We all know that CERN has some very powerful magnets, right? Very powerful magnets. We all know that those magnets are incredibly strong. And I threw you a hint one day. I'm going to ask you this. And you really have to think outside of the box. But if I were going to hide a development of something like they hid the SR-71 and hid the actual development of the SR-71 in several different projects, and the people thought they were doing one thing, but they were perfecting components for the SR-71 Blackbird. If I were going to do that, I'd make a particle collider, because I'd have tons of them. And everybody say, oh, it's another particle collider. But the meat and bones of that facility would be the magnets. Nobody would ever think that the magnets are the focus of the experiment, would they? They wouldn't think that. But let me tell you something about experiments of which the international community is involved in. Every single component, believe me, is being scrutinized. Every single component is a sub-project of something bigger, right? The particle collision piece is public relations. It's the part you don't know about. It's the part that you look over. Nobody's ever going to think of the magnets as being something significant. Well, guess what it is? The strongest magnetic pull on this planet is CERN when it's cranked up. Do you guys know that? Star City is next. Because listen, in order to maintain fusion, you must have powerful enough magnets to keep the cycle going. And then it will run on its own forever. Most people don't know that. Also, if you knew radiation was coming, the only way to protect the Earth or certain land masses is to create your own magnetic field. Oh, and by the way, if you built an underground base, that would do you no good, because they're not deep enough. You would have to build magnetic shielding around that base so charged particles could not penetrate. You guys see how that works? So guess what? What stops charged particles is a magnetic field, strong magnetic fields. That's what stops them. All systems or vehicles that go into space, they must have them that are carrying people. And it's a good idea to carry them if you just have equipment on board too. Remember the dogs? They sent some animals up there. That wasn't good either. That wasn't good. Wasn't good at all. Lisa, how do we do that? How do we do what? How do we do what? Clarify that, Lisa, for me, if you would. Clarify that. Can you create a magnetic field? You don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to create a magnetic field. See, guys, when these times get rough, you're going to start seeing the true hand of the Father in your life. You'll break down in tears because you doubted his power before. But when you see his power, believe me, it's going to be extraordinary circumstances on the face of the earth. I can tell you now, all forces are manipulated by the one who created them. And there is no force that can cause any of us to go before the time. No force. Some of you guys have been in the service. You've been exposed to depleted uranium. And while your fellow soldiers to your left and to your right were really sick, you didn't get sick. Why? Some of you were in the Gulf War taking the PB pills. And while everybody else was bleeding out of the eyeballs and sweating and doing everything else from the PB pills, it didn't happen to you. Why? Why? Because you've been kept. If the Lord kept you for this long to go this far, and you're still calling out for him, he's going to see you all the way through. He is the author and finisher of our faith. He is. He's going to keep you all the way through. All the way through. What is a PB pill? It was a pill, an introduction of a nerve agent in a pill that was supposed to, well, I can talk about the nerve agent piece. Let's just say it was a pill that would introduce a type of chemical compound into the system so that if chemical weapons were used, your chances of surviving it would be much better, especially using entropine injectors. It would be much better if you did that, right? Your chances of life would be much better. And that's what they were. But it was, those PB pills were not sent to the FDA. They were not properly tested. They threw them to the soldiers, forced them to take them. And there you go. What is Star City? Star City is a facility where they're making a star on Earth. That's what Star City is. They're making an actual star on Earth. Do you guys know that? They're making an actual star on Earth. You see, they've already, with the small model, they've already achieved it. Now they need to scale it up. They have achieved it already on a small scale. See, to make it self-sufficient, it has to be on a large scale. You have to reach a certain mass that it self-sustains itself. Now, that can be two things. That can be absolutely deadly to everybody in that area, or it can work. But when you scale up something and mass is involved, so is the risk. Right? So is the risk. And you need a powerful magnetic field to hold all that together. You do. The mass any mass we create on Earth will not provide enough gravity, right? It just won't do it. So then your next best thing is magnetic field so strong particles can't escape. And you see that in CERN. That's how they can direct particles, small particles, down tubes through magnets. With a magnetic field, you can contain things. But in Star City, if the magnetic field, if it does not work, if it's too weak, then you're going to have an expansion reaction they can no longer contain. So the magnets are critical. Cutting-edge science is going into magnets right now. Super magnets, the kind that you wouldn't believe. Magnetic pull that would make you float in the air. That type of magnetic field. A very strong one. And you have to have that to contain the reaction. Because there's no way they can build up enough mass on the surface of the Earth. Now, once they finish this, right? If they finish it, once they finish this, it will power entire continents. It'll be the first of a few. Do you not know that China is building a replica system of Star City right now? Right now. Do you know that the floor plans are laid in Africa, where they're going to put it? Do you know in South America, it's happening again? So here's what's happening. They have this one facility, but they've already started the ground construction in all other countries so that each country can have their own star. How dumb they are. Now, something tells me they are going to achieve it. but it's going to come at a cost. But they will achieve it. They're doing things that you'll read about in the future and say, wow, they've really gone a long way. That they always do this. Have you noticed in articles you read, you'll say, somebody introduces an article, they're saying, well, we're putting such and such on a chip. Well, that if they showed it to you, they've already done it. They did this. They already did it. Most of the ideas that private industry is coming up with has already been done. You have to remember, the folks that are really have never stopped doing things in science and are not checked by ethics committees, nor stopped by Congress, nor do they have to alter their work because of public opinion. They're not dissuaded through death or anything else. These are classified projects. Because you can't see them, they don't exist to you. And so most people are fascinated when they hear that a private organ. I'll give you an example. In the 70s, MIT successfully bonded brain tissue with a microchip in the 70s and in the 80s. Now, back in the 70s, putting brain tissue on a microchip, are you kidding? They did it back then. Back then. So what are they doing now? If they successfully did it back then, and then if you go back in your history, like microfiche or something like that, you'll reach that most of them had a consensus in the late 80s, or not but mid 80s, that the chip had somehow reached a conscience level. Then, of course, government got involved, and that was the end of that. That was the mid 80s. If they did that back then, what do they really have now? What do they have now? People get amazed when they say, well, we have interface with the neurons. That's just like for a long time, I was telling you guys about the brain and computer interface systems. Do you know how far they've gone? Let me tell you how far they've gone. It's something that looks like a baseball cap. You can put on your head, right? Just a shower cap. Let's say a shower cap. You can strap to yourself arm pieces, leg pieces, finger pieces, and everything else. And guess what? Guess what? For a person who they have no feeling from their neck down, they're able to walk and do everything they did with a couple days of training. Because guess what they found out through BCI devices, that's brain and computer interface. Guess what they found out? That your brain can be rewired. Simply by you visually seeing something carry out the commands that you're thinking about. Your brain can be rewired. And then guess what happens over the course of time? You can take the pieces off and take the cap off. Now you have use of your limbs again. That means for most people who have strokes and they lose motion on one side of their body, come to find out, like if the left side of your body is paralyzed, right? If the left side is paralyzed, the left side of your brain still works, right? The right side is damaged. A piece on the right side is damaged. Guess what they found out? You can take that one left side of your brain and control both sides of your body. It can be rewired to totally bypass the right side. And then they found when it's rewired, your brain then begins to grow brand new brain cells, which they never expected this, because you don't grow new brain cells. They die. They grow to a certain point of your life, and then they start to die. And we do dumb things to kill more of them. Every time somebody gets high, they're killing brain cells that never come back. That's what they do. And you don't grow new brain cells, but through rewiring of the brain, by you simply seeing something take effect, brain tissue is growing. Brain cells are growing. So here's the point, though. While most people marveled at the BCI device, they still missed the whole point. The marveling factor is not you can control things perfectly through thought. Nothing has to be pierced through your skin or anything else. They've got a set of headphones. They look like headphones you can wear. They've got something that looks like a Bluetooth. right? The only difference is it does not go in the ear. There are 2 points that go on the front of your temple and in the back of your ear, right? They've got something like that through Bluetooth. It's a BCI device. But you're missing the real breakthrough. You ready? Here's the real breakthrough I don't like. Electronically, wirelessly, you can rewire somebody's brain. Did you hear that? Wirelessly, you can reprogram somebody's brain. Did you hear that? Wirelessly, you can reprogram somebody's brain. You can rewire somebody's brain. The probes on a BCI device only have to be within an inch of the left or right side of your head. Most of you who talk on the phone, that phone is an inch away from your head. The BCI device itself is not very complicated. It works off a set of signals, right? Signals and magnetic interruption triggers. Your phone has higher technology in it than the BCI device that you wear. Your phone has more technology than a BCI device. And with that BCI device, they can rewire your brain. It has to do with how you see things. The key to rewiring the brain is that you see something in response to your thoughts. Like, let's say, maybe an advertisement in response to your thoughts. Maybe you were thinking about something and all of a sudden it popped up on your iPhone. And you're not sure how that happened. Maybe you were thinking about going to get somebody something, and if you have cable television, a commercial came on about that. Maybe the day after, you were talking to somebody about a specific subject, and the movie content on your cable changed. And then you saw more advertisements. The spooky ones are when you're thinking about something. And the advertisement, as soon as you go to Amazon or something like that, the first thing they show is what you were thinking about. That's the spooky part. Now, you can't have some things you can extract from analytics and algorithms, right? Some things you can't. That's over the edge spooky. The breakthrough is that you can rewire somebody's brain wirelessly. No invasive probes or anything like that. None. That means your thoughts travel out of your head by way of triggers. Ones and zeros from neurons that fire. Basically, a 1 and a 0. They fire or they don't fire in different combinations. But they can be restructured by electronic stimuli. You don't even hear. It's beyond your hearing. This is signal to signal. This is electronics, right, to the biomechanisms in your brain. This is electronic stimuli to electronic stimuli. And I mean, it works flawlessly in tandem like you wouldn't believe. But of course, I believe it because the microchip was modeled after the brain. It was. Do I use a cell phone? Yes, I do. With a headset. I sure do. I will never put a cell phone up to my ear. First of all, it feels like I'm being held hostage. And I always have to have a wired headset. I do that because I don't like electronic devices near my head. I seem to always get a headache near cell phones or something like that. But I use wired headphones. Earbuds, they call them. I use that, earbuds. I don't like anything, any of the cell phone technology near my head. It will induce headaches for me. It really will. So I don't like, you'll never catch me holding a phone up to my ear. Angela would tell you that if she's here. I'd say, hold on, I got to find the headset because I can't talk on the phone like that. Feels like I'm being held hostage. I just can't do it. And I've always, I do not like telephones. I don't use cell phones like that anyway. I use cell phones more or less as a tool, not so much for communication. I do not text much or call much or do any of those things. I don't do that. It's simply a tool, right? It's a tool. Mike, what is needed to rewire the brain? Well, you have to be able to see the results of the thoughts. When you think of something and there's a visual response to what you're thinking of, your brain then begins to hardwire that thought, right? And this is how this BCI mechanical portions do work. It's based upon optics of what you can see happening. It's like you checking a box saying, ooh, this works. And so if you do this enough and everything keeps working, right, it becomes part of your life. They began this working with stroke victims, and they found out that the brain was being rewired to control the limbs that the opposite side of the brain was once controlling. And they're doing this electronically. And I'm telling you, it's amazing results. We're talking a full recovery of someone who lost the ability to use the left side or the right side of their body. That's what we're talking about. People being normal again after they had one of those severe strokes and they've been paralyzed on one side, their brain on the same side as the paralyzed portion of the body, taking control of both sides of their body. That's how they're being rewired. But every time you think of something and you optically see the reaction, there's a chemical conversation that goes on inside the brain that then hardwires that activity to say it's okay. The more you do it, the more it solidifies, then muscle memory forms. And once you have the muscle memory, those are like commands that your specific brain will give your arm to do and your legs to do and whatever to do. And then the memory in your muscles kicks in, so it knows what to do. So essentially, your nervous system is a network. And they found a way to rewire the network. So your brain can be rewired through a wireless system. All you need is optical approval. And because we watch television so much, and because we have things up to our heads so much, and the proximity is getting far distant, now this is, I can't validate this, but I have read in a few places that BCI devices can now work up to 113 feet. 113 feet. The reason why that would have limitations is because you would begin to pick up everybody else's thoughts too, and you would get no clear signal, right? Now, when they make it directional, which they probably have, well, then you're dealing with something else. I also know that back in the 80s, they had a device where they could speak directly into your head, and only you would hear what was being spoken by way of sound waves. You wouldn't hear it with your ear. It would be inside of your head. Nobody else would hear it except the person that they were pointing this device at. And they could physically speak in this device, and the person would hear it inside of their heads. Your bone structure would be the speakers, and you would hear it inside of your head. Real technology. Very real. It drives people crazy that way too. Right? Boy, and these things just, they keep going on and on. But you know what? It is a shame, really. It is a shame because who is that? Those in the body of Christ, is their thoughts much different than the populace? Can they rewire us? You know what? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because the one thing they do know is when a person is walking by faith, right? It's a very strong stimuli in faith. They found out when people are praying and everything else, you're looking at changes in delta, alpha, beta waves in the brain. You're looking at chemistry changes in the body. You're looking at your body heats up or cools down or whatever it has to be. You're looking at very strange chemical changes in the body when you're walking in the spirit and operating by flesh. It's very difficult to penetrate because now your brain waves are all over the place, right? And now they can't interpret what your brain is doing, nor can they speak into your brain either, right? Because a person of faith is always, you are the ones that are sensitive to the influences of evil in the first place. You're the ones where things nudge you to do something wrong, and you place it directly in subjection to Christ, and you say, no, I'm not going to do it. You're not giving in to those things already. But what about the person who has no spiritual walk? What about the person who gives in to the voices that they hear? What about the person that operates and lives their life by emotions? That person's not going to make it. That person can be rewired because they're going to listen to what they hear. We don't operate by feeling. The Holy Spirit is not to operate by feeling and emotions and things of that level. It's a higher power by which we operate. And I thank the Lord, He gave it to us. We're covered by the blood of the Lamb. Those methods will not work on a person who walks by faith. It just won't work. Precious says one of the braces coming out, they're already out in certain communities, and it's part of an ID and tracking system. It's going to be for your safety, so they say. These things are coming, folks, and we're going to have to make some decisions, won't we? Hey, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to be right back. We're going to do a briefing on the 25th and the 26th. You guys know that tomorrow I'm going to be on Pastor Paul. I'm going to talk about most of the substance of, some more substance of the wave on his show, so that those who listen to Pastor Paul can get an opportunity. Because you don't want anybody terrified of the 25th or the 26th. If it were going to be catastrophic, I would have already told you so. Right? Because if I have knowledge of something catastrophic, I have no problem telling you. I don't. I have no problem telling you. But if something is not going to be catastrophic, but you need to have knowledge of it because it's going to affect your health, it will eventually affect the planet, and the changes to the planet, we're just not ready for that. We're not. We're not ready. And so we need to know about it so that it does not cause us to have heart attacks. We need to know about the magnetic changes that will take place on this planet. Now remember, I told you without the influence of the magnetic shielding, charged particles can come right through. If they come through, your neurological connections will be broken. If they're broken, you'll act like an animal. Right? Chaos. Now that would be true chaos. If those charged particles penetrated the surface of the earth, doing what they did to the early cosmonauts and astronauts, that would be chaos, because people would just simply want to kill each other and survive. Neurological connections broken beyond repair, cells destroyed. All these things happening at one time because of cosmic radiation, because we have no magnetosphere. And Lord help us if the magnets reverse at CERN. See, they're putting off a strong magnetic field. But if the polarity changes, we're in real trouble. In fact, CERN would be in real trouble. If they got their negative and positive mixed up, something bad would happen. There would be a huge explosion. CERN is essentially a controlled nuclear weapon that they can put out. They can put out the reaction, right? That's why they have such strong magnets, to seal up the reaction, to make sure the reaction does not get out of control. And believe me, it is a controlled nuclear weapon, and they don't let it explode. Because if you look up the theory of nuclear weapons, you're going to see CERN. And if the magnets ever fail, you're going to have proton flows that will do some real damage. If protons go astray, they can travel through anything. Magnetism is the only thing that keeps them in their place. Then you're looking at real trouble. I'm going to be back in a minute. Then, folks, I got to go. I really got to go when I come back, but I'm going to take a break. Thank you, Robin. I'm going to take a break. Or Birdman. That is Robin. I'll be right back, you guys. Okay, everybody, I'm back again for the last time. Boy, that was a terrible fade out, wasn't it? All right, so where were we? Now, let's analyze something real quick about any fear concerning the 25th and 26th. I'm gonna tell you something. Do you guys know why I wouldn't care if a meteor was headed toward me, right? I still wouldn't have any fear. Do you know why? Do you guys know why? I've given my life to the Lord. My life is His responsibility. But it's my responsibility to follow Him. I need not protect my own life. I gave my life to Him. So I don't need to save my own life. He saved my soul. He's in command of my life because I gave it to Him. So I trust my life with Him that I may obey Him. I need not worry about my life. So I don't walk around with fear, wondering if I'm going to lose my life or not. No, that's not in my hands. It's in His hands. I gave my life to the Lord. He's in charge of my life. I'm following Him. I can focus on what He gave me to do. I take no thought of my life. I don't take thought of many things because if my life is in His hands, so are my provisions, so is my safety and anything else. And I do accept and respect the fact that anything that happens to me, He permitted. Right? He teaches me through these ways. I would never reject His teaching. Never. That's why I don't fear. And I've found in every single case, all of it, everything that's ever happened to me was that I may see Him. I may see Him. So don't fear. Fear nothing. Fear is for those who don't have Christ. Christ is the one. Christ, Jesus is the one. He is the one that opens the seals. So then He is the one that has the timing on all of these things that happen. So then He's the one that's doing it. He is the only one worthy to open the seals. And when He opens the seals, things begin to happen to the world. He's the only one. So if our Savior is the one doing it, what do we have to fear? Think about that. What do we have to fear when the Savior's doing it? Right? We have nothing to fear. That would almost be like you're a small child and your father is going out to kill a chicken. Why would you be afraid? He's not going to kill you. He's going to kill the chicken so you can eat. I'm just giving you an example that if you're with the person who can do those things, you have nothing to fear. But those who oppose Him, well, they have every right to fear. They've not given their life to Him. And you know what's so sad? They really don't know Him, or they would have given their life to Him. They don't even know what hell is, or they would not sin. Most people don't have, they have no idea of the Lord's majesty, or they wouldn't walk their own walk. They would submit fully to Him. They would perceive the Father as very gracious, knowing He has all authority and power. We don't deserve life. He loves us. Even that thought will humble a person when they think of it in truth. He is the power of all powers. He can, in a heartbeat, nothing can stand against Him. He could wipe us all out in a split second. He doesn't need to develop weapons. His commands will be followed, and His word never fails. And we don't deserve life, but He gave us life through His Son, an abundant life. So I have nothing to fear. Why would I fear what the Father is going to do? See, that comes from a misconception that Satan can do whatever he wants to do. No, he cannot. If the Lord says, that's enough, Satan will run away. No one will oppose or stand against the Father. Didn't you notice that Satan will go to the throne of God and ask permission of whom he may mess with? The Lord asked him, well, what's wrong with you, Lucifer? And what does Satan say? I found no one worthy for me to go against. He said, have you considered my servant Job? The key phrase in there is the Lord asked Lucifer what was wrong with him. Are you kidding? So then Lucifer is performing a function by order of the power of powers. Nothing can stand against your Father. Nothing can stand against Christ. And everything that happens is permitted. It is our duty and responsibility to learn of him. Learn his language towards us, this simple language. The more we learn of him, the more faith we have. The more faith we have, the less we function by the faith. The less we function by flesh. By flesh. The less we function by flesh, the closer our walk is to Christ. Very close. And who can touch anybody when they're walking so close to Christ, who was raised from the dead victorious for all time, who now has the keys of hell and death? Oh, by the way, because Jesus has the keys of hell and death, no one goes to hell nor dies unless Jesus approves it. So why would you fear? Your Savior has the keys of hell and death. He will decide who's going to the pit and who will not. Nothing is left up to chance. With Satan, people would say, well, that's just your fate. No such thing. Jesus has the keys of hell and death. He is our Savior. He is victorious. And if we abide in him, so are we. Nothing to fear. On the 25th and the 26th is going to be an electronic watch to see subtle changes in particle flows, influxes, sensors by certain satellites. They're going to watch them carefully. They'll begin counting, measuring, and seeing, starting on the 25th, all the way through a 2-year period. A lot of money devoted to tracking certain things. You're not going to die by any wave coming through suddenly on the 25th or 26th. I'm confident of that. But throughout the course of this thing, there will be episodes without warning that will be quite devastating. You cannot prepare for something that has the potential to wipe a whole continent off the face of the earth. How can you prepare for that? The only way you can prepare is to ensure you abide in Christ in absolute truth. Abide in Christ in absolute truth. You will see crop failures. You'll see a terrible drought. Strange storms. The jet stream will begin to change when the auroras come. That's going to indicate some heavenly troubles, which means inbound. You see that, something is overwhelming our magnetosphere. After that, radiation and the haze come. So watch the auroras, and you'll see a physical effect upon the planet shortly thereafter. That's going to be the one thing you need to watch is auroras. But even when you see that, don't become scared. Just say, oh, some dodo in the body of Christ already told me about that, no big deal. And then you can be confident and tell somebody else, hey, Jesus is still Lord. If radiation comes and the red dust is all over the place, you can tell somebody Jesus is still Lord. Do you want to give your life to him? I don't care what the trouble is. I've been in bad trouble. And guess what? I would still say, hey, while somebody was afraid, they would ask me, what happens to me if I die? That's what they would say. They'd be scared to death. I wouldn't be. And they would always ask the same question. What happens if I really die? And you know what that lets me know? No one considers death until it comes knocking at their door. No one. And that raises people to a point of fear. If you are fearful, you're fearing what? Can you define your fear? In most cases, you can't. In a lot of cases, it's going to boil down. You have a fear of death. Well, can I share this with you? There is no sting of death with Yahshua HaMashiach. No fear. Is this going to be a rough time for humanity? You better believe it. Because we're going to be dealing with war, with famine, with disease, with drought, hunger and starvation. Places will be abandoned over time. Things like this will happen. And so what? We're still covered by the blood of the Lamb. No matter the circumstances. The Lord is Lord over our lives, those who belong to Him. I need not look over my own life. If I've given it to Him, it's His to look after, not mine. He will keep me. I cannot keep myself. That's the thing many Christians have to realize. You can't keep yourself. You already failed at that. But the Lord can keep you. The Lord can keep you. You cannot keep yourself. Right? Somebody says, Michael, even if you faced with death twice, weren't ready to die feeling unfinished business. I faced that more than twice, and I can tell you that the first time, I was terrified. I was. It was a thought you didn't entertain, honestly. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Early, when I was young, I faced it. And guess what? I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how to act or anything else, and it was spooky. So I was like, wow, I could really be gone right now, right? A few other times, I began to realize something. I said, wait a minute. Now I'm spending all this energy on thought. Why didn't I think about this before it ever happened? Then it hit me. I wasn't taking death seriously. I tricked myself into believing I could live forever and things of that nature. Then when I gave my life to Christ in seriousness, right? When I truly gave my life to Him, I truly gave my life to Him. And I would, every time I would go out to certain places, I had this little prayer I would pray. If something were to ever happen to me, right? Then thank you, Lord, for what you have done, what you've carried me through. See, at that point, I didn't care if I stayed or went, because I did so unto the Lord. And I knew He was Lord of my life. I took no thought of what was... See, everything the Lord wants us to finish, we have to do today. And I know what you're saying, that you feel like things are undone in your life. And you know what? That's a good indication that we didn't complete what we needed to complete today. Because tomorrow is promised to no one. And if tomorrow is not promised to anyone, then what the Lord told us to do, we must do today. Does that make sense to you all? I know I've been saying this 3 days in a row. But it's important. I think it's very important. Due to the fact that we're not no man is promised tomorrow, then that means what the Lord told us to do, we must do today. It also means the victory is today. Do you know how mad I was one time when I found out I could have been living victorious? Listen, every time I find these things out, I feel like an idiot, because I start thinking, well, Satan just had me hook, line, and sinker. He had me hook, line, and sinker. Who put these thoughts into my head? And that's why often when I'm talking, I'll tell you guys, who told you this? Who told you that? And then people can't remember who told them. They just adopt things and utilize them. Isn't that something? Life and death is not in my hands. Life and death is in your mouth. And that life and death is for your life or your death. But if I stay in this world or go, that's up to the Father. I do not cry at funerals. I don't. I've seen a lot of death, over 300 deaths I've been to, 300 funerals I've been to, over 350. I don't cry at funerals. And if I know somebody belonged to the Lord, I'm telling you, it's a sigh of relief. It's a joy that comes in me because they made it. I never feel that they're gone. You see, a real tragedy is when somebody dies without Christ. But if somebody makes it, who has known the Lord and fought the good fight, it's time to rejoice. Don't you think? See, if we saw the truth, we would act in the truth. But guess what? Do we really act in the way of truth? Because if we acted in the truth, we would not have unexpected results, would we? How can you follow the path of truth and have unexpected results? I'll tell you why. We walk based upon our imaginations, based on what we think the ending is going to be, and then we get upset when the ending is something else. But if we follow truth, then truth is the establishment of the result. Truth is the result. How can anybody be disappointed when truth is the result? You can't be. Can't be. That's something else. You know, you learn these things over time, and then you really feel stupid because you say, well, I've been upset for years. I've been upset for years because I didn't get my imaginative ending was nothing like what really happened. Right? Once you give it all over to the Father, you don't